for a second. And I think we can be up on these things. Hey, thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have you, all of you, to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide. Johnny Million is with us, looking particularly spooked right now. Hi, you're okay. You're going to be all right.
I just got word moments ago that the Orioles fired their manager.
Oh,
moments
dear.
Ago.
Will you recover? Over the course of the show, we don't know. We'll have to check in with Johnny throughout, check his emotional state.
Had to happen.
Yeah. And look, I feel it's sad that they broke up about whether, about the best way to eat one, whether you take off one half of them and you eat the middle, or you just eat it as a cookie by itself.
Exactly. And like the single stuff doesn't even seem like
doesn't
a
even
cookie
work.
anymore. It's like double stuff is the bare minimum.
I'm convinced that Oreos are actually made, the cookie part is made with sugar and ashes. Yeah, some sort of...
Yeah, and the Baltimore Oreos have a little bit of crab dust on there. Yeah.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Day.
It'd be terrible, but it would make sense. And that's the important thing. We're live on Instagram right now, and we're live on Substack as well. If you do the Substack thing, subscribe to the Hal Sparks Substack Mega Worldwide. If you feel like it, that'd be lovely. Hi, Substack people. I can see you in the chat room. Throw us some hearts, if you would, in there. People on Instagram and Facebook, please throw in some angry emojis. I insist. Same thing with YouTube. I think that now works as well. And after the show today, Johnny's going to be live streaming, and so we're going to raid him via Twitch. If you're on Twitch, we'll throw that over there. Yeah. Oh, buddy. So
so good. I'm gonna play the guitar.
And you're gonna do such a good job at it. I have to say that having been on Queer as Folk for 5 seasons, living in Toronto for 6 years while I filmed it, and being immersed in the LGBT world and the civil rights movement around it for decades, I reached out to some of my folks who, if you have gaydar, they peg the needle.
There's some angry faces in the chat. Like, they are delivering.
There you go. Yeah, they're selling it. Thank you so much, everybody in there. We're going to need them because that's the only thing that helps you. I don't know if you know this, in Facebook and in Instagram is the angry emoji, because apparently their algorithm is based entirely on outrage. So Twitter used to be like that, but they've given up on it entirely because you can't be outraged in that kind of like a right-wing, white supremacist circle of jerks.
You cannot rage
you know what I mean?
against the machine if one is the machine.
That's right. Yes, if you built the machine yourself and you're pouring kerosene into it. But the Donald Trump reaction to MBS and his personal conversations with him and his attitude towards MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
I thought you were saying IBS at first, and that is no laughing matter.
Well, Trump, he's got colon problems. We know this. And from his latest, which is, again, not surprising. Exactly. I think that's mostly, would throat cancer count as a bowel problem from Trump? I think so. That's he has to go see an ears, nose, and throat person to get his butt checked. But that's for you, Johnny Million. Right. I have not seen Donald Trump show as much love for that he showed to MBS as he showed to any of his family members, his wives, past and present, anyone. Like he was so he was fawning on him so much that it was. I kept laughing about it when we were watching the actual video on my live stream, because I kept imagining like, Jesse Waters or Sean Hannity or Greg Kelly or all these right-wing media people who love Trump and thinks the sun shines out of his backside / throat or whatever it is so either they got amazingly jealous or they were just kind of shocked and uncomfortable.
Hal, be jealous no more, because Hal Vickery has started seed money to buy you and the Sparklers a $400 million jet.
Oh, that's nice. That really?
Thank you, Hal Vickery.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah,
Hal Vickery.
no, yeah.
Oh my God. Bless you. Well, hopefully it won't be a $400 million jet that requires $1 billion to make it usable, which is what the case would be with this Qatari jet that we've been talking about. Also, what I think would be really fun is if they gift it to the DOD. The DOD obviously would write it off immediately as, well, you can't use this for the president. It's got none of the countermeasures that Air Force One has. It's not safe. It's like you might as well be flying commercial to some degree. Never mind, if if the syphilis he has versus the syphilis that's in the couch cushions on that thing get into a cage match, then we're in big trouble, right? Because his thinking will become even more shattered. But ultimately, like they can't use that plane for Air Force One, even if he wanted to, without putting the president's life in danger. So it would never be cleared to do that. Secondly, the Congress would have to allocate the funds to fix it up, right? And thirdly, I think it would be really awesome if when they dedicated it they gave it to his library, which I'm fairly certain will be an app in his case. If they dedicated it to his library, they're like, totally. You get the plane, but we're keeping the engines. Because, right? Yeah. So, because they're going to have to retrofit all this stuff. So the plane that they dedicated to the Reagan library, they took out all the Cold War stuff that was in it, right? And if they modify the engines, which they have to do for Air Force One, because it can't just be your regular run-of-the-mill thing. Like, we know how fast that plane can fly, right? Because it's this model. Obviously, Air Force One can go much faster, can practically leave orbit. And so they don't just leave them there so anybody could walk out to the tarmac or the parking lot at Reagan's library up here in Calabasas or wherever it is and take a peek, right? So, yeah, break the thing down. I think they should give it to him after he's done in pieces and go, yeah, what are you worried about? You're a multi-billionaire. It'll only take you $3 billion to put it back together. The brain farting that he went through while he was on this trip is not surprising at all.
That
Considering
was his rambling. There were so many weaves.
Oh, yes, it was very weavy.
So many weaves. This is one of those things where I set it up, but I'm like depending on you for the punchline.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
There were so many weaves.
Right. There were so many weaves. It was practically a Tokyo drift. No, he was. Yeah, there we go. No, yeah, there were so many weaves. They pulled him over and made him walk a straight line, which he can't do. I'm kidding. The problem with weaves and driving references when it comes to Trump is that he can't drive
At all.
Yeah. So, we'll talk a little bit about the plane and all this stuff. But to me, in large part, this was just Donald Trump going over there, being the salesman for American companies, trying to help them make these deals so that he can claim that the absolute dollar amount of the sales that he makes, Boeing's deal, NVIDIA's deal, whatever they're selling, that if there's going to sell $100 billion worth of stuff, that he wants credit for or a commission on that $100 billion. He thinks he's owed that because he goes there. Now, most presidents, that happens along the way anyways. And in the case of like highly sensitive technology, they have to sign off on it. Biden has done it. Trump did it before. Obama has done it. Certainly Bush has done it. God knows what Halliburton was getting as far as, tech and information that they're getting signed off on, or available intel that they were able to use when they were doing stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan, certainly. So it's always happened. Trump just thinks it's new to him. He doesn't understand that that's a normal part of the gig. And so he wants credit for a piece. Bless you. He wants credit for not just
Did you hear
what
that
America.
or just see it?
I just saw it. Credit. He wants credit for the entire number, not just what the money. Well, I'll explain it on the other side of the break, because what he wants is he wants to add whatever tens of billions of dollars that they talk about that might be extrapolated over 10 to, because of this Project 2030 that Saudi Arabia is doing. He wants credit for all the money that will be spent between now and 2035, as if it's happening this year, so that he can add it to a pile of fictional money so that he can get his tax break. That's what this is all about. This is all about that, and we'll talk about that on the other side. You're listening to the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. All right,
Pew, pew, pew.
And all the energy you could hope for. What? There you go. Hold on, I gotta. Okay, very good. Shut the door. Yeah. So, yeah, I was.
Now you shut the door.
Yeah, right. Do not go in there.
If you get it in order, you get extra points.
Wowee.
Yeah, that's the Dumb and Dumber sound effect. Yeah, where is it? Tim O'Brien.
50 seconds.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, chat room. Welcome. Good to see you guys. I'm going to try and put my chat up in here so that I can see it. There we go. Coming up. And yeah, there we go. Cool. There's the live. I'm going to pop out the chat. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Look at this. Thank you, Hal Vickery, so much. And thank you, Lisa Miamore, as well.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, needless to say, the trip to the UAE was odd and embarrassing and downright creepy. It was also, I think the biggest takeaway is how ignorant Trump is of just how everything works. That seems to be the clearest thing. Like, more than anything else, I was struck by, because there was plenty of blather, there was plenty of word salad, there was plenty of him sucking up to MBS. I practically thought he was going to ask him out. It was just...
He's handsome.
It's super handsome. He's a very handsome man. Yeah. But the awkwardness of it for me was like Trump's, and again, I don't know whether or not this is meaningful to his own ignorance, that he's not playing dumb in these situations. He just doesn't know how things work. And so that the people around him, the people in Qatar and all these other places, are just looking at him as a mark. Right? This is... He
has no idea. He's the perfect mark.
Yeah, he has no idea that they're, that they're coming, that they think they're going to get anything out of it. He thinks he's pulling the wool over their eyes. This is a one-sided transaction. He's the boss, and everybody wants to buy American and be in America and all in America, and we're the store that everybody wants to buy from, and yada, yada, yada. This is watching him go through this whole thing, watching, the attitude and the sort of the news about him obviously setting up private deals, obviously setting up golf courses and buildings that he wants to build in these places, but just totally enamored with the money of this whole thing, just like intoxicated by the marble and the fact that they had a McDonald's truck bringing him food, which was just weird. But which it has a lot to do with, his, like, how do you suck up to this guy, right? Obviously, you've never had an easier mark if you're Saudi Arabia. You've never had an easier mark if you're Qatar. And this whole idea of giving him a plane, and they're like, in this Brett Baer interview he does, he goes, well, how much would that cost? And they're like, it wouldn't cost anything. We just give it to you. And he was like, that's kind of, okay. All right. That's a, right? That was his whole shtick. Well, the problem with that is that his response to it was like, wow, that's neat. As opposed to nobody gives away a $400 million airplane for free without expecting something in return. He certainly wouldn't. So why in the ever-loving hell would he expect somebody else to? Right? That's the weird part about this, is that the great deal maker, the man who is, who knows, who wrote The Art of the Deal, all that kind of stuff. There is nothing that in there. He wants to sell himself as this savvy businessman, and yet at the same time, by no means is he savvy about the other angles on this. It is so frustrating to just kind of watch, because it's so dumb. We're spotting it immediately. Like, you're watching it, you're like, this is just a grift. This is ridiculous. And yet at the same time, the very people, the Jamie Comers of the world, and all the people who were like, oh my God, Hunter Biden got a ride on Air Force One to China and walked out with billions of dollars, something that absolutely did not happen. I'm sure he got a ride on Air Force One, but he didn't walk out of the country with $1 billion. Like, and Trump was like, wouldn't that be great? Isn't that great? Is exactly what Trump and Jared and Don Jr. have all been doing or attempting to do out in the open as blatantly as they possibly can, because they have set the tone that any criticism of them is just people being mad at their success. And why didn't you guys complain when Biden did this, even though he didn't? So it is that part is bizarre. So for me, I in watching him react and like fly around to these little countries and just have his mind boggled. He did his little sword dance last time he was there. He touched the orb. This time he's walking around looking at giant lit up walls about how much money they're going to invest and all this kind of stuff. Like he's somebody. It's like taking your grandparents to CES, to the Consumer Electronics Show, and they just see like these prototype cars, and they're like, "This is what's out on the street right now." And like, no, Ma, that's 10 years from now at best. This is all BS, right? That's the issue, right? This is the reality that we're talking about, is that Trump, while pretending to be the world's greatest businessman, while pretending to outsmart everyone in all this stuff, is just the biggest sap playing 3-card Monty on a train any of us have ever seen. So we go to the plane. Okay, so let's look at the root of the plane story. Huge, by the way, great distraction from the fact that the big, beautiful bill is not going to pass, and that Marjorie Taylor Greene, Trump had to talk her out of running for Senate because she was absolutely going to lose, and that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have just been dragging their feet at best on the Epstein thing, or specifically undermining, right? Specifically, stopping or slow rolling or hiding things to keep Trump out of the limelight around his relationship with Epstein. So this whole trip, by comparison, the standard kind of monetary graft he is engaged in, which is no surprise to anyone, pales in comparison to the stuff that it's covering for. So it's hard to cover it in that regard. But let's look at the plane at its root. 13-year-old plane, not worth $400 million by any stretch of the imagination. It is a gaudy, floating brothel that these guys fly around the world in while they live a allegedly highly pious and religious life while they're at home. They hop in these things.
That's the best part.
filled with concubines and all kinds of humans being trafficked, fly to countries with very loose rules about this kind of stuff, hang out there for a while, and then fly back. That's what that vehicle is for. And everybody knows it, and it's quite obvious. The idea that you could take that thing and gift it to a president ain't going to happen. So Trump's people found a way to make it like, hey, we found a loophole in the law. They'll give it to us as an Air Force One. They'll gift it to the DOD, which, by the way, it will never become an Air Force One because it is technologically inferior to Air Force One. And we value the life of our presidents in most situations, right? Versus most situations. Well, obviously, Trump is cutting security details for all kinds of people at this point, so he doesn't quite care. But I will say that in the case of Air Force One, it is effectively a fighter jet in the shape of a transport, and it's got all these things about it. To convert this $400 million derelict flying brothel into anything remotely close to a second level Air Force One would cost $1 billion easy, which is, by the way, the problem that Trump had with the cost of Boeing making a new one. We would have a new Air Force One that you don't have to retrofit anything, that's built on the specs that would actually protect the president and keep continuity in our government and all that kind of stuff, except for the paint job Trump wanted, because he doesn't understand that the planes, how they are painted, has more to do with the heat of flying that high and the thinness of the atmosphere, and you can't put a dark color on top of it because, anyways. So the point is, everything about this is we've always talked about distractions when it comes to Trump. This is a distraction. The Greenland thing, Canada, these are distractions. And I would argue now, I have decided that there are two variant streams that fit in the distraction category. Distractions that are absolutely blather, just news stories meant to throw a monkey wrench into the cycle to draw attention away from other stuff. And Trump has done a lot of these over his life. But the other ones are these odd fixations, things that will never happen, but Trump himself knows that they are controversial, and he can use them as distractions just by talking about them. And if they actually happen, that he would take credit for it. So Greenland would be one of those things. Canada isn't. There's no way we're invading Canada, but his idea of that he's had that you could buy Greenland from Denmark or simply put bases on it and then over time just go, hey, get off our land, which would take 40 years. That there are two strains of those distractions. And the important part of them when they show up is not the details of those distractions, because there is no purpose to the details of a distraction. When these distractions show up, when they are a part of the conversation, when he brings these things up, when he starts talking about Greenland, when he starts talking about the Panama Canal, or he starts talking about the turning Gaza into a freedom zone, stuff that we have no direct control over, and nor would we want to. And we're not going to put troops on the ground and turn it into some sort of international hub city like the Noam in Saudi Arabia. What that does is draw attention from the direct failures and the lies that he told on the campaign trail coming home to roost, namely the budget, inflation, and the cost of that old-fashioned word, groceries. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, man. Thank you very much. Now, let's see. Did I get this over here? Okay, good. I want to bring up there was a story, I talked about it yesterday, and it makes me mad. It was. Is
that your Thurston Howell impression? Please say yes.
No, it was not. It's John Cleese.
1960.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Devin.
Thanks, Devin. Hold on, I've got to find this story. Where is it? Here we go. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're almost back. Think done. Hold on.
10 seconds.
Thank you. Okay.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, so in all of the areas where Trump made big promises, take for example, the Ukraine-Russia war will be done in one phone call, one night, right after the election. I won't even have to be sworn in. I'm going to call these guys. I know exactly what I'm going to say to each party that will make this end in a second, and it would be over already if we didn't have such stupid people, and if I was in office, it wouldn't even happen. Now, then he gets into office. That obviously doesn't happen. And there is no reason why, if it was true that that Russia never would have done this if he was in office, why they wouldn't stop immediately now that he is lost on me. I don't grasp how that logic works at all. Like, well, we're already going. I mean, we would stop because we're scared or impressed or we respect you or we give deference to you, but right? It's absurd. Yes, the war would be over if Russia left, if Putin got out. Exactly. So,
Right.
So that's not working. Obviously, the India-Pakistan thing is teetering. There's a lot of fighting back and forth, and Balochistan, which is the biggest province in Pakistan, is talking about breaking away on its own, which would make it the third nuclear power in that area and richer than the rest of Pakistan. So you would now have 4 areas in the region, if you include Kashmir as an autonomous region, that would have direct hostilities ongoing forever. I don't know what the next round of things is because Pakistan's not going to go quietly. And so the idea, and then he stopped bombing the Houthis, not because we'd won anything, because they laughed and partied in the streets over it. He stopped bombing them because the maggot brigade in the House was saying, hey, I thought no new wars, and you've been bombing them for 50 days. This is starting to turn into a war. It was a war. It's just harder to hide it, right? So all these things, and then the budget. The big, beautiful bill. We've been hearing about this for a while. Now, Johnny, do you remember when the Republicans first took over the House when they won it back under Biden, and they were talking about how they want to do the budget? Did they want to do one giant bill to rule them all?
I don't remember them leading with that.
Do you remember the talk of 12 bills? Do you remember that? Remember when they were talking?
Oh.
Okay, so they were talking about
bills?
Yes, because their problem is that Democrats put these budgets together, and then you're forced to vote for stuff you don't like because it's included with the stuff you do like. Dagnabbit, right? That's how they get you. They make you vote for education if you want, uranium-tipped ammunition, and it's just not fair. So that they were like, no more of that. We're going to vote for each of these things by themselves. It's going to be an a la carte budget based on the merits of what we think should be the spending for each of these things, right? And now that's really easy. All you do is and if you control the House, you bring to the floor the bills you care about the most, blow up the budgets for them as big as you can possibly get them, and then as soon as you pass those, we'll get to social spending and programs and student loans and Department of Education and health and all that stuff later, and then you just punt the rest of the budget. And then you go, well, we can't fund it, so we already spent our money, so we don't want to raise the debt ceiling, and we don't have to because unless you want to add these programs to the budget. So why are you wanting to cost everyone so much money, right? So that was the plan. 12 separate things: a bill for the Department of Education, a bill for the Pentagon, a bill for, how to manage the Social Security Trust Fund. Like, everything would be separated, and they would do it every year, okay? None of it happened. They didn't do that at all. And if you'll recall, what they ended up doing was 2 bills, right? They ended up under Biden to make sure they could pass it through the Senate and they would get all of the people in their caucus on board and actually pass, and that Biden would sign it, it would have to have all the programs he wants in, and they were like, what we'll do is we'll front load the first one, and then we'll put all the stuff we love in the first bill, and all the stuff that sucks in the second bill, and then he'll have to sign this one because it's a must pass, and that'll sign it, and then we'll go, we'll get to the second stuff later. So they basically do the same thing, but just in 2 chunks. And then ultimately, there was a draft where they were concerned that some of the Republicans would walk away, where they took some of the things, the must pass stuff that the Republicans really like, and they moved it to the second bill. So that you kind of have to vote for both. Everybody has to hold their nose. Nobody gets everything they want. These are 2 bills, and both of them have what would be effectively poison pills by everybody's standard. Everybody has to give a little to get a little, right? And this was these 2 bills, which they both passed. And we're on the CR of those, that particular budget right now, continuing resolution. And we will be again, because I don't think personally that the Republicans are going to get their act together to put a budget together anyways. But we went from, we're going to do 12 bills, everything divided up individually, and we're going to be really fiscally conservative, to 2 bills just to make it done, to Trump coming in, get it done. I just want to sign one thing and go back to golfing. Give me one big, beautiful bill. Now, how big do you think a bill encompassing all that stuff would be? A $5 trillion raise in the debt ceiling, the extension of the Trump tax cuts, his budget proposals for the next fiscal year. How big do you think that is? You think you can write that on 25 pages or less? You think it'll have some cartoons and graphs in it? Or do you think it'll be like one of these situations where you're holding up, 3,000 pages and going, nobody's even read this, like the ACA? By the way, nobody will read the great big beautiful bill before they sign it, including Trump.
No.
So again, all of it is hypocrisy. Of course, it's absurd. Like, we know this. Okay, which is the interesting thing is like Democrats aren't voting for it, but Republicans are having a hard time getting their own people on board, because apparently some of the most maggoty maggots in the House, especially, were under the illusion, I guess, that this fiscal conservative stuff that they were running on was an actual thing. And that we got to read these bills, right? We're going to be the party of fiscal conservative, and we're going to break down we're going to go through every line. We're going to go through, and Doge is going to help us. And this is where we get to the fun part. So Doge. So did you hear the part, Johnny Million? And I'm just going to assume the answer is no for most of these things, because you don't drink from the fire hose.
I'm your guy, Al.
Yeah, right. That Elon Musk was saying about people who were the amount of fraud in Medicare, Medicaid, emergency, like FEMA payments, Social Security. He was saying that when you cut off funds, the first people that squeal about it are the fraudsters, the people who are defrauding the system.
This I remember.
Right. Which I have a problem with that logic. Because I got to say,
they don't want to draw attention to themselves.
Right. Yes, exactly. The
criminals.
They'd be the last people to do it. If anything, they would dovetail into a group of other people who are filing a class action lawsuit.
All right, now I have to take this junction in my fraud career, and I can't depend on that kind of frauds, and I'm just going to have to, redesign a bit.
So where did he get that idea other than just being stupid? Because it was very specific. Like he said half. He at one point said in one of these
somebody who's actually fraudulently abusing Medicare.
Right, yeah. From a friend of his, right?
Somebody projecting.
Right, yeah. So he said at one point half of the people who are getting Medicare and Medicaid are committing fraud, that it's all fraud. And so you can see where they got the number for where they thought they could save $1 trillion from the budget. Because of our expenditures in healthcare in this country, it's about $4.9 trillion, and a big portion of that is through Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security payments and that kind of stuff. So if we could get all the fraud out of that, we could save ourselves $1 trillion, especially if that fraud is 50%, right? Yeah, Cosmos knows exactly where I'm going with this. So the number that he actually got was 40%. And the number in this Fox interview, and people need to follow me on this, I don't want to hear anything about how these guys are computer whizzes or they're smart or they're the tippy top brainiacs that Trump calls them and all this stuff. So here's how it works.
I was going to say this whole segment.
I'm sorry to sweep the leg, Johnny, but
shut me down.
Right. So in a Fox interview where Elon Musk and a couple of these Doge dopes were sitting around talking to whoever it was, Brett Baer or Sean Hannity or something about the cuts they were making. This guy said, and this was in that interview, and it became widely disseminated throughout all the maggot mediaverse and all over Twitter, that 40% of the calls to Social Security from people were fraudulent. That they had numbers that said 40% of the calls that came in when people had they had to change their information, or their benefits were cut off, or they were delayed. 40%, right? This is the story. This is what he said. And again, these are genius, whiz kid, super smart, whatever. Okay. So where did that come from? Okay. Where this guy heard this was that in 110,000 calls to the Social Security Administration during the spring, over the course of like 3 months, two of them, two individual callers, were flagged as having a high probability of being fraudulent. 2 out of the 110,000 people called in and said, hey, I'm changing my direct deposit, or I didn't get my benefits, I moved, I need to update my address. Okay, out of 110,000, 2 of them were flagged as being having a high probability of being fraudulent. Not flagged as fraudulent, but having a high probability of being fraudulent. Of the 110,000, 2 of those phone calls. And less than 1 of those calls was primarily the fraud was happening via the phone, which I would assume is that the other person that called said, hey, I'm just checking on my form that I sent in. Did you guys get it? Okay, cool. Click. And so technically, they weren't fraudulent on the phone about the form they sent in. It was the form that was the fraud. That would be the thing. But what the number that actually came back is that of the 2 phone calls, of the fraud that comes in, 40% of the fraud that actually happens, which in this case was 2 calls, 2 people, 40% of the fraud that happens via the phone. 60% of it happens with people filing false claims and that kind of stuff. And if you say 110,000 and 40%, it sounds like, if you're running slipshod around this, that 40% of 110,000. And so if you extrapolate that to the rest of the system, for every month overall, oh my God, there's $500 billion worth of fraud every year, when there's not. And the actual number of flagged fraudulent, by the way, this isn't actual fraud. This is the stuff that was that was flagged as fraud by Doge themselves, was 0.0018%. And that, ladies and gentlemen,
not much.
That, ladies and gentlemen, more than any other reason, is why Elon Musk slinked away with his tail between his legs.
It's gone.
And has not been hanging around in the White House, and realized that his idea that we can scoop $2 trillion off the budget, or save $1 trillion with just waste, fraud, and abuse. And what he was saying, you could trace the BS from this guy misunderstanding this phrase, saying it all over the office, this lie floating in everybody's brain pan, including Elon Musk's, and him telling it to Trump, and Trump never questioning it because he wants his tax cut, so he's hoping it turns out to be true, right? And then it doesn't. Is Trump telling Elon Musk to go pound sand, and he's slinking away simply because Tesla stock was down, or because he was embarrassing him by jumping around? No. It's because he promised something he couldn't deliver. He made Trump look weak and stupid by believing it was possible. And so when you take 0.0018% of the calls that come in, and the people that deal with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security as a subset of the people who actually use it, the subset who call in or request help, that 0.0018% of that group and then you eliminate a bunch of programs that were already scheduled to end this year because they are cycled through by each president, stuff that's normal within the executive order round of things, that's how you get $150 billion worth of, quote, savings by Doge. Now, here's the other part. Not only is the current president spending $150 billion more than the Biden budget last year. If you don't know, like, spending is up this year, okay? Under Trump, he has already added expenditures to the pile and cut nothing. But let's give Doge credit where they think credit is due. Let's take their lie at face value that they have eliminated $150 billion of costs. Right, let's just take that as rote, okay? That they've magically made that disappear. You know what that means? That means Trump's spending.
Does that mean I get a $7,000 check in the mail?
No, you do not. You did not vote properly, and they've got those records, so they will be sending those out as uniform tax breaks to only maggots. Here's the thing. What it means is that Donald Trump's spending is up $300 billion, not $150. And that's if you take Doge at their word. Because if they cut 150 and we're up 150 from last year, that is math even somebody from Doge could do. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. There we go. That's right. So, yeah, where's your check? That man, did that die quick? The Trump stimmy, right? That one, that idea that they were gonna we're gonna give this will be like a taxpayer dividend. We're gonna give back to them, whatever. We're gonna basically buy votes. Do with voters what we did with farmers last time, right? That's the idea. Let's see. What's happening to all the people on Substack? There you are. What's going on? Hey, Brian. He's there. There's Brian. He's in there. Fantastic. We got to have you on the show sometime, Brian. I insist. So this, well, we'll wait till we come back.
35 seconds.
Thank you. Well, it's always funny having to hold my tongue until we get back on the show, right? So
yeah.
It's a
only happens on Saturdays.
It only happens on Saturdays. Is it true that Elon only sold 855 cars in Germany last month? Yes. I don't even know if it's that high. I would argue that those were already, those are fleet vehicles.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
So, somebody was asking about that. Is it helping that Elon Musk has gone back to Tesla? Tesla.
I bet they're thrilled.
Oh yes. Now Tesla's stock, because it's a meme stock, has gone up as people are after the 90-day pause with China, because it specifically helps his industry. And it specifically helps his vehicles because the vast majority of them, the undercarriage and the battery systems are all made at his gigafactory in Shanghai. So, but their deliveries year over year are down 13% from last year. And this quarter of this year was the worst quarter for deliveries since 2022, which again was sort of the beginning of the Twitter story. I think really it was when people started not buying him because his main audience, his main crowd, didn't like the fact that he was buying Twitter. By the way, with the help of the Saudis and Sean P. Diddy Combs. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you use Twitter or whatever you call it, you are helping pay for Sean Combs' defense. Congratulations. Good for you. And you're like, I don't pay for the service. I just use it. If you're bringing traffic, you're bringing advertisers. And if you're bringing advertisers, you're funding it. And if you're funding it, some of that money goes into the pocket of Sean P. Diddy Combs, ladies and gentlemen. No two ways about it. You can't deny it. You can deal with it or look the other way, but that's the reality. And the rest of it goes into the pockets of MBS, who, if there is any profit at all, that's the other thing. The best way to handle this is to make sure it isn't profitable by staying away. But MBS, the guy who basically threw Jamal Khashoggi into a wood chipper. But the sales in the rest of the world, they're bad in the United States. They're down 36% in Spain, 46% in Germany, 55% in Belgium, 59% in France, 62% in the UK, 67% in Denmark, 74% in the Netherlands, and in Sweden, 81%. And these are in a cascading, if you call out these countries in that order, these are also sort of the order of countries that are adopting electric cars the most. So they are finding alternatives or just sticking with their car and not buying a new one in the interim. So, and this is not going to turn around. People are going to invest in Tesla because they think it's going to be because it's a meme stock, quite frankly. That's why. They believe it's like voting for Trump again. Right? But all over the world, they're not selling. So meanwhile, at the same time, you've got competitors like Volvo and Ford and GMC who have struck deals with NVIDIA, for example, who are for their self-driving cars or their kind of, I would say, augmented driving experience, because right now it seems like Tesla is the only one that's all in on this self-driving car business, because it's designed for people who are used to being chauffeured, I suppose, and don't understand the desire anybody would have to drive their own car. It's very odd. But in the meantime, the folks that are trying to build on their real car market, GMC, Ford, Chrysler, all these other Mercedes-Benz, I suppose, as well. Those guys are making deals with NVIDIA and all these other things to augment the driving experience while not making it fully autonomous in the end. They're all going to do some version of it where in the future you could take a nap on a highway and your car drives down the highway. But it'll be a long time before the average American driver feels comfortable in that circumstance, I would say. But I know I would. I like, there's just something weird about it. Like the idea that you would just take your hands off the wheel and just trust someone like Elon Musk to not steer your car into a river seems odd. Especially since we know, because of his deal with Ramzan Kadyrov, that he can turn off cars remotely. That in and of itself, I don't understand. Look, I know why he lost audience on our side of the aisle, because, we're all big into electric cars and solar panels and renewables and all that stuff, and that is not going to change. So other companies pop up. We're not going to have singular brand loyalty because they were first to the market if the head of that company is doing Nazi salutes and denigrating trans people and engaging in kind of like the conversion of Twitter from a social media site to basically a Stormfront chatbot group. We don't need to go back. We'll find another version of it. But maggots, if they're going to buy it for any reason, it's going to be, autonomous freedom, and we're freedom and freedom and freedom, right? Well, if that's your idea of freedom, that the head of a company can turn your car off without your permission, I don't know that you can be reached. It's a particularly odd thing. Now, Philip Bittner's going to be joining us at the top of the next hour. Obviously, I was on the Just Ask the Press show with Brian Karam, his podcast. He also has Just Ask the Question. We were talking a lot about the lack of deal in terms of, Trump not going to Turkey, even though he was talking about, we're going to talk Turkey, we're talking Turkey, because Turkey is where it's happening. So that's a joke, sort of. The idea that he was going to fly there and leave the UAE early, because why was he even there? And fly to Turkey to help negotiate this peace deal, at least a ceasefire temporarily or however long, between Zelensky and Putin. And of course, Zelensky shows up and Putin goes, if Trump's not coming, I'm not coming. And Trump's like, if Putin's not coming, I'm not coming. And that's that. So
adorable.
Yeah. And predictable. Adorably predictable. The better issue, the more important story about all of this is that it seems that Putin's intransigence about these kind of things is getting on Trump's nerves, because it seems like Trump was under the opinion that he could end this war in a phone call, and he knew exactly what to say, not because of his own faith in his deal-making ability, but because he thought Putin would do him a solid and help him look good, and they would work together as a team because they're kind of on the same side of this autocratic thing. And there are no sides in the autocratic things except us and them. And no autocratic leader cares about even other autocratic leaders. And if you don't believe me, ask Xi Jinping how he feels about Kim Jong-un and how Kim Jong-un feels about Vladimir Putin, and the cycle goes on and on. If they could knock the other off and take over everything that they have, they would do it in a heartbeat. It's just a matter of the potential is not there. The possibility, the difficulty is, the cost would be too high. That's the only reason they don't do it. And we were talking a little bit about how, it's kind of disgusting to watch how flattering Trump was to MBS, who killed Jamal Khashoggi and ordered his death, and that kind of stuff. And there was a little bit of equivalency about Obama bowed to him and Biden fist bumped him. And I would say there is a huge difference between understanding that to keep our peoples from warring or violence breaking out in a bunch of different areas, having to stand next to some of these people in certain cases is going to be an unfortunate necessity. But there is a giant difference from fist bumping someone and taking a picture with them to kind of placate the possibility of a breakout war, and going, a free plane, that's the difference. And Trump...
Do they all think they're going to get a free plane too? Like the weird defensive billionaires? Yeah.
Well, and again, it really was less about Trump and even Lutnick and Bessent being there, but the corporate leaders from not just here, but from Europe as well, that they brought in tow, that they had with them, that were striking other deals, including Don Jr. and his, Patriot financial nonsense, or their crypto scheme that they've been putting on. Philip Bittner's with us, waiting in the wings. We're going to talk to him right after the break. He's the host of On the Edge. While we're at the break, why don't you check it out? And of course, infotainmentwars.com. Subscribe right now. We're looking to get 20 subscribers this show. Just 20 people just hitting that subscribe button. I think we can do it.
You can do it.
Yeah, I think 20 of you that watch on the regular, it doesn't cost you anything. Just go for it. We'll be back. Okay, and then I will add Phil to the right.
I heard some very cat-like destruction happening out there.
Oh dear.
So I'm going to go check that out.
Hold on, I've got to move.
Oh, look, Phil and I are in the same little cubbyhole. Hi, Phil.
I know.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll move you over, Johnny. There you go. Because we always have to move this around when it comes. That's why the issue with it. How's it going, Phil?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, all
right.
So
is that better framing or?
You don't have to do anything. It's on my end. It's okay. It's because I split the image. You're fine. Yeah, but the closer you are to dead center, the better on you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that helps. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah. This is Q1, and we'll go Q2. Excellent. How goes it? How you doing?
Yeah, all right. Kind of wet and rainy day here, so gray and overcast and all that fun stuff. So
right.
Slightly congested as well. Don't know what's going on with that. Sinuses are bothering me.
That's barometric pressure being what it is, and a change in the.
I suspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suspect.
Right. So, the Zelensky meeting didn't happen. obviously.
Big surprise.
Yeah, right.
And I just saw about an hour and change ago that I guess Putin and Trump are going to have a call on Monday. So we'll see.
Right. In theory.
I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's ultimately the tough part is that we live in the era of like unfalsifiables where people just because there's either a cloak of anonymity around something, there's no way to verify that any of it actually happened.
Yeah.
So Trump does this. He uses this all the time.
Yeah, he does. He just says something and hopes that folks will forget about it in 24 hours, and he'll just move on. So we'll see. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, the Istanbul talks, of course, came to nothing. Mm-hmm. Not a big surprise. Some minor things, but nothing that major.
Right.
So again, not a surprise. Not a surprise. Russia doesn't want to stop the war. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And Putin, I think Putin just put out a statement saying, we're going to finish everything that we intended to that we set out to do. So we have, we're unstoppable. It's like, well, sure.
Yeah, it says Trump to talk to Putin on May 19th. And then I want to say it was his, was it the Truth Social post? Did he bother to put it in there? Nope. Okay.
The one about Zelensky being a better salesman even than him.
Right. Right. No, we've run into a, where is it? I got to find this whole thing. War in Ukraine. There you go. Yeah. Trump says, hopefully it will be a productive day. This is about the call. A ceasefire will take place and this very violent war, a war that should have never happened, will end. God bless us all! ! U.S. President Donald Trump on Truth Social.
Back in 20.
Thank you.
He's an idiot. He's just the biggest idiot.
Yeah.
The sad thing is, even if we did, get him out somehow, J.D. Vance is just as bad.
Yeah, but I will say that Vance can't marshal the troops the way Trump can. And so, he would be dead in the water. It wouldn't be the situation where, finally we got a true MAGA star.
And Congress could overrule.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So a lot has certainly happened in the Ukraine front, and none of it is Trump solving it with one phone call. Joining us from Kyiv is our dear friend Philip Bittner, host of On the Edge. Please subscribe to his YouTube channel. And, of course, Johnny Million is still with us. He's going to be farming questions from the chat that we have for Phil. Trump says it's turkey time. This is turkey time. That's a direct. Honestly, I will, quote, impose sanctions if Putin are not going to make a deal. He said that would be crushing for Russia because they're having a hard time now with the economy. And then he just posted about this May 19th call. Hopefully it will be a productive day. A ceasefire will take place, and this very violent war, a war that should have never happened, will end. God bless us all! 3 exclamation points. U.S. President Donald Trump on Truth Social. So, what's the response over there to what Trump said about adding sanctions, or his kind of flip-flopping around, sort of talking tough with Russia occasionally, but then backing down from it and getting mad at Zelensky for something that happened 2 months ago that,
Well, it's too early to say what their reaction is going to be from the announcement of this phone call between Putin and Trump on Monday. That only was just released, right, I think, within about the last 90 minutes or so.
Right.
But generally, nobody was holding out any great expectations for the discussions in Turkey.
Yeah.
They all kind of knew that the Russians weren't going to go there in good faith, and
right.
Trump and his kind of waffling about whether or not I'm really going to be mean on Putin this time if he doesn't, well, you will believe it when we see it, sort of thing. I think generally, I was in the office earlier today and I was talking to the staff, the guys I have working with me. And their general estimation was that, like, it's just, no matter what Trump does, it seems, Putin is just hell-bent on continuing the war. And he's not going to listen to Trump. He's not going to listen to the Europeans. He's not going to listen, of course, to Zelensky. He's going to keep fighting this war. That's clearly what his intent is. And he's said it openly, that we have the resources, we have the means, we've got the wealth, et cetera, to achieve our strategic aims. Mm-hmm. And what he means by that, what I think what he means by that, and I don't know for sure, because I know that at the beginning of the war, the idea was the strategic aims were to decapitate the government in Kiev, put in a friendly government, and also to sweep down along the Black Sea coast, take Odessa, and make Ukraine basically a rump state, cut off from access to the sea. And that was their intent at the beginning. Those were their quote-unquote strategic goals at the beginning.
Right.
Since that time, I highly suspect that those goals have changed, because they are not taking Odessa. They will lose another 500,000 men in casualties before they're on the banks of the Black Sea in Odessa. And I mean, that includes, they have to take all the territory leading up to Odessa. And they're also not going to change the government in Kiev to one that's going to be friendly to Moscow.
No.
The hatred of Russia is profound.
Yeah.
Too much blood has been spilled.
It's permanent now.
It's permanent. The division, the rift is too great.
Yeah.
What he might be referring to is taking the 4 oblasts, which is just a Russian word for a province or a state, out in the east of the country that will allow them a land connection between the rest of Russia and the Crimean Peninsula. That could be the strategic goals that he's referring to. But that is a far cry from what he set out to do. And I just don't know what that's going to mean when the shooting stops and all the patriotism ends. Will the loss of so many men be sufficient for the Russian people to go, it was worth it? And I'm really not sure it is. And there's a long history of wars that don't go well, and of swift and usually pretty violent upheaval in the government. I mean, going back centuries, but notably the Decembrists back in, I believe it was 1826, you had a whole bunch of soldiers, Russian soldiers, that had fought in the Napoleonic Wars, and they came back and they had seen how the rest of Europe lives. And even though ostensibly they won that war, they came back and they said, hey, we need reforms. And that was this massive upheaval. And then, of course, you go to the Russo-Japanese War and the First World War, which was run by Tsar Nicholas, and that was catastrophic. So he gets killed and the Soviet Union gets built and Lenin gets his communist revolution. Then 70 some odd years down the road, they have Afghanistan, and that is a miserable defeat. And that contributes in no small measure to the collapse of the USSR. So there's a legacy here of wars being very, very, even like I say, ones that they ostensibly won, like in the Napoleonic Wars, that wars are really risky things for Russian leadership. And I think Putin knows it. And I think if he can't come back with some sort of trophy that he can present to the people of Russia, he's going to be in real serious trouble. And I'm not saying he can't do it.
Right.
I'm just saying it's not going to be as easy as all that, I think. So rough days are ahead for everybody.
Right. And agreed. I would also, I think it's abundantly clear that Trump in his phone call on Monday is not going to make any headway in this. So the question will be, how long does Zelensky have to deal with the blowback on this before Trump realizes that Putin has him over a barrel and is mocking him with every one of these phone calls. And does this new, buddy-buddy relationship with the Saudis, who, while they're in OPEC Plus with Russia, have a more adversarial relationship currently with Russia, say, than Iran does, because of Iran cozying up to them. So there's this geopolitical chess match that they're having to deal with. So this was, by the way, this is Trump's. Let me see if I can bring this up so people can see it. Here we go. Oops, there you go. This guy, sorry. Trump says, I will be speaking by telephone with President Vladimir Putin of Russia on Monday. I'm glad that he puts the whole name on there so that we know. On Monday at 10 a.m., the subject of the call will be stopping the bloodbath, in quotes, that is killing on average more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers. After that, I will then be speaking to President Zelensky of Ukraine, and then with President Zelensky, various members of NATO. Hopefully it will be a productive day. A ceasefire will take place in this very violent war that should have never happened will end. God bless us all. That's where the beginning of that part came from. And the issue that they have is that there's no way this lands. There's no way this call turns into something legitimate, because he's got no leverage. No. We're not trading with them now anyways. We're not going to turn the spigot back on. Europe's not going to do it. No, we're not going to add them to the SWIFT system, right? So,
and didn't he say also that the topics of discussion would be ending this war and blah blah blah?
Yeah,
but also
trade.
Yes. Trade. Which is, of course, deeply troubling. That's what a lot of Ukrainians are really worried about, is that Trump, being Trump, is going to start lifting sanctions. What they want to see is actually strengthening of sanctions. The sanctions are not as strong, not nearly as strong as they could be. I mean, they don't go after what's called their ghost fleet, which is still trading oil globally, and kind of a lot of naval security guys kind of turn a blind eye to it.
Right.
That could be cracked down upon. They could release the money that's been frozen that would fund this war. There's so many things that they could do. And this week's episode of On the Edge, it was pretty timely, actually. We were privileged enough to get an interview with a former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Stephen Pfeiffer. And we talk about all of this. All of this. And his point about the Trump administration is he's not effectively negotiating. He's not using a system of carrot and sticks. He seems to be willing to give away whatever he does have, whatever cards he does have. He seems to be willing to already, give them to Putin for some unknown reason. But he's not playing hardball with Putin, and the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs are running circles around the delegations that we send. I mean, and again, we discussed this on this week's show. I bring it to the ambassador as a long-standing member of the State Department, a serving member of the State Department. I say, we have swept our, the expertise that we used to have about Russia has been swept, and instead we're getting these guys like General Keith Kellogg. Nothing, I'm not going to tear General Kellogg down, but he is a guy who, his expertise is there because he had interlocutors with the Russian military, but he doesn't speak Russian. He doesn't know the region. He only knows the kind of military aspect of it, and only from his perspective. And then you have Secretary of State Rubio, who's kind of used to be hard on Russia, but he seems now to have tempered his language. But everybody else is a joke. Everybody else is an absolute amateur when it comes, and notably, Witkoff.
Well, when it comes to Witkoff is again, we're starting to measure his failures
out of his depth.
Yeah, especially like the India-Pakistan thing that happened. But they resolved that effectively on their own, and Trump wanted to just take credit for it because they were doing so poorly in all these other areas. The issue, of course, with Witkoff is that Trump thinks that he negotiated a great ceasefire with Israel and the Palestinians, which fell apart. and he had almost no say in. Again, this is more what the Qataris did in terms of negotiating this thing than what Witkoff getting any concessions or anything special from it. And even as a through point, it was more between the Israelis and them. Same thing happened in case of India and Pakistan. I guess the question is Trump just taking these wins to cover for the fact that they're failing so badly everywhere else, and that it's not going to happen? There's not going to be this magical, ceasefire from Putin. Again, what happens Tuesday when this doesn't go away? When we're back where we are again. And the most frustrating thing, I think, for me, and we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll take some questions from the chat room too. I think Johnny's got some, but the most frustrating thing for me is the fact that Zelensky is continually on the hook for Russian intransigence. So the more Russia plays hardball, the more Trump is playing this kind of like both sides do it business, which is not the case. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Sure. Oh, good. Okay. Because it seems like every time we turn around, Trump is both sidesing this, and it's just brutal. It's so blazingly unfair and lame, and he keeps running interference for Putin in this, and there's just no surprise. Nobody's shocked by this, but there is a real, there's like a logic problem that has to show up even in. Some maggots are never going to move over and support Ukraine, but like the Dan Crenshaws and other aren't, they're not lost on this, right?
No, the Congress, there's still enough guys in Congress that because support for Ukraine is popular. Mm-hmm. So, I am hopeful that Congress, still keeps. I don't know if they'll get. I don't know if they'll get more funding bills or if they'll pass some sort of agreement that allows for purchasing of weapon systems, and then the Europeans can flood Ukraine with money, and then
back in 20,
whatever they need. So, but I think any support for Ukraine will happen in spite of President Trump, not because of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's marshaling the world's support for Ukraine and with it sort of the trade relationship stuff that they have.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
It should come as no surprise, by the way, that Witkoff's translator in Russia for all these talks was assigned by the Kremlin. During the latest talks between U.S. presidential envoy Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin in Moscow, he was accompanied by a Russian translator. However, Witkoff apparently believed that she was an employee of the American embassy, but she was not. Natalia Koshkina is a linguist at the Department of the Russian Foreign Ministry. She previously worked at the Russian mission to NATO and appeared in photographs together with the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service, Sergei Naryshkin, and Putin. His translator works for the Kremlin. That's how behind the eight ball these guys are.
Yeah,
it's embarrassing.
Normally, what happens when these guys come in, the kind of the modus operandi, what you're supposed to do, is you go get a briefing at the embassy. It's the first thing you do. And again, speaking to this veteran guy from the State Department on this week's show, he makes the point of, and he still has contacts at State. And it's like, I don't think he even went to the embassy before he went to go meet Putin. So he didn't get a briefing. He just rocked up. And this is part of the reason why the translator was such a kerfuffle.
Right.
Embarrassment.
Again, the fact that they operate on this kind of like gentleman's agreement trust with this particular group and is shockingly dumb. It is embarrassing that and again, because it's one part, if they're ignorant about it, it's embarrassing. It's the kind of just like ham-handed, newbie BS that you would expect from somebody who doesn't take the job seriously. But on the other hand, there's so much footsie with Trump and Putin over the years that it makes it look nefarious at the same time. That Witkoff would be fine with a KGB supplied translator because it gives him plausible deniability and it keeps an American translator from being there to hear the entire conversation because they're in the room with them. So one of the reasons you bring a translator is not just so that you can, what he said, sir, was this, so that they can translate directly, but they could sit there and listen to the conversations that are happening in the room and they understand it. By getting a KGB translator, Witkoff is only hearing the things they want him to hear.
Yep.
It's so basic. It's bizarre to me that that MAGA World and Fox and all this kind of shrug this part of it off. Now, let's grab some questions. I think, Johnny, we already have some. I don't want to get too far into this without addressing some of them. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we're going to dance around a little bit. John G. would like to know, what is Philip's opinion of Trump's military parade wishes?
Oh no! I mean, it's awful.
You're not all for
terrible. I'm not at all for it. It is Red Square kind of stuff. It is Pyongyang. Yes, he kind of apparently got the idea from Bastille Day in France, which is a republic. Mm-hmm. But Bastille Day is a completely different beast. It has an entirely different history, and because of what Bastille Day means to the French and the esprit de corps, and the French military is not the U.S. military. And the fact that he's doing it on his birthday, it's all incredibly distasteful and should not be happening. Certainly, we shouldn't be footing the bill for it. They're gonna have to step up the streets of Washington, because some of those tanks, a 70-ton Abrams tank, if I remember my stats correctly, will tear up Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah,
it'll just tear it apart, and we'll have to we're either going to have to put money into beefing it up, or we're going to have to repair it after the parade. The whole thing is un-American. It is. Yeah. It shouldn't be happening, and it's so obvious.
Like, it's such a Peter parade where he's desperately trying to have virility and meaning in his waning years and his flagging physical nature, and he's always compensating. He's always trying to make up for what he perceives, or women in his presence when he is disrobed have perceived to be something lacking. And it's exactly why the other leaders need it as well. Or they're trying to warn everybody, don't cross our border because we have all this stuff. So that's one of the other reasons you have these kind of parades. Well, we don't have a circumstance where Canada or Mexico is going to invade us, and we've got two coasts where we have oceans between us. You're not going to run submarines down, Pennsylvania Avenue. So the entire thing is just lame, and it will be seen as such. Now, I've said, I feel like, people need to, mock this as ferociously as they possibly can. But in the end, it's going to come and go with a blip. It's going to be such a nothing. On top of all these things, even amongst his own people, there'll be pictures of him, and there'll be a T-shirt of him waving at tanks, and some maggots will be seen wearing it at events. But that's the extent of it. It's just to sell a new T-shirt, honestly.
Well, I also kind of like Malcolm Nance's idea of turning it into a day of protest as well. So get out there and steal his thunder. He wants this to be his day in the sun, where he can kind of do his Mussolini kind of.
Yeah, but he also wants people to. He wants to say that people are booing our military or booing the troops or ignoring the value of our troops and their valiant sacrifice. That's how he hijacks these things. And so that's the issue I have with that. Anyways, John, you have
another one? And the troops are going to hate it.
Yeah.
The troops are going to hate it.
Right. Go ahead, John.
I do have another one. This is from Howie Z. Phil, where are the minerals Trump is after located? What general area?
They're out in the east. They're kind of along the line of contact. They're just outside, I believe, inside Russian-held territory, or close to it. It's right along that Donbass, coming down from like Kharkiv down towards like Pokrovsk or Zaporizhia. And so this is why, the whole minerals deal is kind of weird, because in order to get access to it, you're going to have security, and it straddles the point of contact. So it could be very well that this is actually going to be Russian territory.
Well, that's the issue. So
it's that whole thing.
You can see this right here. You can see this right here, like the purple area of this map. Like these purple dots are where the rare earth minerals are known to be. There is a chunk of them that's sort of in the in Ukrainian controlled area, but the biggest overall is this stretch over here in largely Russian controlled area. So this would the pink area would be this area right here is all Russian controlled. But this stretch right here, obviously, is the rare earth minerals that we keep talking about. There's a ton of other things like titanium. There's uranium deposit. That's the yellow ones. The polymetals are the blue areas. They've got lithium, which is not a big deal anymore, but that's largely in the Russian areas too. Beryllium, manganese, graphite, and then the non-ferrous metals. So, but a bunch of it is like the collection of the odds and ends are around here, but the biggest rare earth mineral deposit is in this claimed territory. And the concern is that Trump is going to go like, as long as you give us the minerals in those areas, we'll let you keep what you've taken in that regard. The problem is Russia needs those as well. That for their future, both their military and all that kind of stuff, is the size of their industry, the military stuff that they sell when they're not directly at war with a country smaller than them that's kicking their butt. They need those materials for their computers and their targeting systems and their missiles and their they need this uranium for their depleted uranium bullets and the like. So and to run
but I've also heard from experts on the topic that Russia doesn't have the technological capability. They don't have the know-how on how to extract some of these things. It's not just like coal. You don't just dig it out of the ground.
Right.
It's much more complicated process of getting these things out and accessing. A lot of sifting, a lot of different types of mining techniques, and high tech kind of like side drilling and all sorts of kind of bizarre. And again, this is not my area of expertise. I'm basing this on what other people have told me.
Right. It's expensive, time-consuming, and technologically farther advanced than they are. But let's just say anytime in the future they do want to catch up with the rest of the world, they're going to need it. And that's my point. They may not have the ability to do it now.
They can hire.
They could also sell it to China because as much as China has, that's largely been overstated as well. And again, rare earths aren't rare. They're all over the earth. It's the process where a denser deposit makes it easier to extract what is there, but there's a little bit of this stuff everywhere. So, that's the issue with it. And we're good. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more. Johnny Million. If you haven't subscribed, we're trying to get that number up today. What is it? Subscribe on YouTube, infotainmentwars.com. So, there's a, let me see if I can bring this up. Yeah. The stuff, I gotta say, man, the stuff between, like Trump and the UAE and the Saudis and stuff was just cringy as hell. But one of the big things he was talking about was like selling the largest order of arms to Saudi Arabia in U.S. history, which is saying something because we've sold them a lot of stuff over the years. But there's a reason why he's wanting this to be the biggest order ever. And it ain't because he wants the region to become peaceful.
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
He thinks
it's also the whole anti-Iran thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Sunni Shia split.
Right.
So
crazy.
We shall see. Yeah, bad. Really,
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is bad. The whole thing is just awful. And they're the blatant
back in 15.
corruption is just insane.
Right. So that I want to talk a little bit about Lindsey Graham and a couple other senators are calling direct for immediate sanctions on Russia.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, for the record, there was a 22-point peace plan that was drawn up by the U.S. and Ukraine. That this as one that Witkoff, in all of his wisdom, to have a KGB translator walking around with him, telling him exactly word for word what was being said around him. I have no doubt. It should come as no surprise that Russia rejected it. The 22-point peace plan that was written up by the U.S. and Ukraine, Russia has officially, right before the phone call, I guess, with Trump on Monday, rejected it. In the meantime, a bipartisan group of senators and an increasingly large number of Republican senators are calling for direct and devastating sanctions against Russia immediately. They want to introduce tariffs on countries that purchase Russian oil, gas, and other resources. Graham, one of the authors of the sanctions bill, which provides for secondary 500% tariffs on major Russian exports, calls for people to stop playing games with Russia. Putin has no intention of being peaceful. Anything he agrees to will be a lie, and he needs a strong dose of military might against him and economic reality. Roger Wicker, one of the other senators who came out, in support of this, said. Blumenthal said Putin will continue to delay and block ceasefire efforts until his economy finds itself in isolation on a financial island. So they should the idea is that they should just rush in and do this. That we should just get to it. If the only thing that will stop them is economic devastation, pitter patter, let's get at her.
Yeah. Well, he's right. They're right. We could be far more stringent on our sanctions, and yes, sanctioning people who do buy Russian natural gas and oil, fossil fuels. So that there's a repercussion for them. India, in particular, I'm looking at you. But we again, and I've already mentioned it, we could crack down on their ghost fleet, which everybody knows. Everybody knows what they're doing. It's not a secret. So you could do something about that. Yeah, there's absolutely more things that we could do to make their lives miserable, which they deserve because they're not. The other thing that they're right about, those guys, is, and not just them, but I mean, this is internationally increasingly becoming accepted. Russia doesn't want to stop the war. Russia wants the war to continue. They want the war. They want to and they're also on a war economy footing. So they kind of have they're on that self-fulfilling kind of thing where they have to keep going because if they stop, it's like riding a bicycle. If you suddenly stop pedaling, you just fall over, sort of thing. You have to keep the momentum going. How long they can keep doing that without burning themselves out, we don't know. But they don't want to stop the war. And that's the real problem. And they have to get to a place, either militarily or economically, or even isolation in terms of, international relations and diplomacy. They have to start really facing consequences, or they're not going to.
Yeah, they have to be a pariah state, or they're not in every sense of the word, or there's no reason to remedy any of this. And if Putin is not feeling the power now as they approach 1 million dead, the idea that he's going to, once they cross that line, is absurd, because all it shows is he to his own people who do support whatever he's doing, that he's tough beyond measure. Man, this guy doesn't care how many people he loses. This guy's a beast, right? even though it's obviously other people's lives and not his. But the point is that if he hasn't learned his lesson yet, he's not going to, unless it ratchets up to an extraordinary level. And again, it doesn't mean us, if you don't want military action, if you don't want NATO or the U.S. to have to take military action, the only thing you can really do to really ratchet that up is extraordinary economic pressure. It has to be a complete firewall. Otherwise, they will always find ways around it in the same way that China found ways around Trump's tariffs by like bouncing stuff through Vietnam and Cambodia and other places that only had the 10% tariffs, and then undercutting the price by 10%. So everything on Temu and Alibaba was selling at a 15% markdown to cover that fact, so they could still kill American businesses that might have this fantasy that they're going to be competitive. Let's we get on time. Yeah, let's grab another question, Johnny. What do we have?
Yeah, right on. This is from Ed's 3D Tech. Can you ask Philip how much time or money does Russian sovereign debt fund have left? Some have said it's down to 30 billion.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I just don't have an answer for it because I don't think anybody does. One of the major problems is because Russia works on a gray economy. We don't really know what their GDP is because they hide it because of corruption and embezzlement and all sorts of other reasons. Illicit trade. All sorts of different reasons. So how long is a piece of string? Is kind of unfortunately the answer. It will run out of sovereign debt, and it will increasingly become difficult to stock shelves and to keep the lights on, as it were. But I wish I had a better answer, but we'll know when it happens, because we don't know what their true wealth status is, and how much is left in those coffers. So, there's a lot of indicators and a lot of people who are saying it's getting to the breaking point, but then there are others who, obviously those who are pro-Moscow, in particular, saying, no, though the Russian economy will never be beaten and the ruble will never be, devalued so bad and all the rest of it. I lean towards more to the point of they're getting to a breaking point. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, the official number from them is 144 billion still in their wealth fund, but that is not liquid, meaning probably what's liquid is about the 44. The 100 billion will be assets, asset class. But again, what are they going to do? Sell those things and have that money if they need to use it for something else? It's ridiculous. The other problem they have is less about how much money they have in the coffer, but actually how many people they have to carry stuff out. So there was a story about their, we've known about their demographic collapse. It's the same issue that China faces. It's just not as acute because they're not as big a population to start with, but it's fairly close. But the quote from censor.net is, if the current dynamics continue over the next 5 years, the shortage of personnel and available workers in Russia could reach 4 million. The greatest demand is expected for workers with medium and high qualifications, particularly in key sectors of the economy. And that has largely to do with the fact that there were two-part. The brain drain when everybody split right as the war was beginning, right? And then the people that they gathered up and sent off to war to die. So you took a bunch of people who were working in gas factories in these facilities and all these places, and you sent them off to Ukraine with a rifle with the battery with the bullets in it facing the wrong direction, or a flashlight glued to the top of it with no batteries in it, and they didn't come back. They either didn't come back because they surrendered, or were able to fake their death, or because they actually died because they didn't get any training and they don't know what they're doing and they should have been working in a sewage treatment plant. But they're listing as the main reasons on this, and this I didn't even look at this ahead of time, but this is the list that they're putting forward is why in Russia what they're up against: mobilization measures and mass emigration of highly qualified specialists and representatives of scarce specialties. So about somewhere between 650,000 and 1.1 million people fled the country to avoid conscription. We saw those like armies of young men, just ironically, I guess armies, running to the border and trying to find ways, their parents trying to find a way to get them out of the country before they were forced to fight. The demographic hole of the 1990s, which is catching up. The chronic unattractiveness of the labor market in the agricultural and industrial sectors due to low pay and difficult working conditions, and no workman's comp, no protection. You know what you get when your arm gets crushed in a industrial turret lathe? You get a bottle of vodka and a week off. The lack of systematic training of technical specialists, so they're not training people to fill these jobs anymore, so they don't even have the workers if they wanted to. Business reliance on migrants instead of investments in training and automation, so they're bringing in people from the outside. They just passed this law about rounding up immigrants as well, which is just brutal. I guess the baseline of it is there's just no there there. This is the same thing I see happening in terms of the Chinese system. And Trump said in his interview with Brett Baer this week about the China sanctions, like, I had to let them off or China would break up. Okay, he didn't say that out of a vacuum. Somebody around him is telling him what's going on, and he's exaggerating it as he usually does, but it's based on some seed of truth that somebody blathered to him in the Oval Office, I don't know, a week ago. But China could very well break up in the next 10 years, but largely because of a demographic collapse, not because of tariffs, not because of a lack of an industrial base, but because they are loosely stitched together provinces that don't necessarily listen to each other. And Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region don't look, act, or aren't genetically Chinese. So that's the problem that China has, whereas it is a Han supremacy China under the CCP. So those are the two trains that are going to collide, and there's no way out of it. Like, we could do everything we could we could do everything we did to protect Japan after its economy collapsed for China, and it would still fail because of the direction they're going. And Russia is in that situation.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? Like,
Russia, no matter what happens with this war, Russia is going to be a very difficult place to live in for a very long time, especially out in the provinces, which
you're on your own.
You're pretty much on your own. It also has breakaway republics that are going to be problematic, and that's me being cautious with my words.
Right.
Notably in the Caucasus. If it wasn't for Kadyrov, Chechnya might rear up again. They've got the Ossetians, the Dagestanis, the Ingush. There are all sorts of different republics that, if the center of gravity that is Moscow can't force them to stay in their orbit, then things are going to get increasingly nasty. And it was never really nice to live in the provinces in Russia.
No.
And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. It's for a very long time, too.
Permafrost. It's lonely. There's no real infrastructure to get out there, even except the trains, and they're hit and miss. Keir Starmer is present, unlike Trump, at the actual talks in Turkey, and his response was, Russia's position is clearly unacceptable, and this is not the first time. Following the meeting with President Zelensky and the phone call with President Trump, we are now coordinating our response and will continue to do so. Like, it's a non-starter. And the phone call's not going to change.
DOA.
Yeah. Putin's not going to ask for the moon from these guys and then give Trump the soft sell and allow him to have a win.
No. And the Europeans are also not going to let that happen either. And they are increasingly becoming more and more coordinated. I mean, look at you had the leaders of Britain, France, and Germany, and the Prime Minister of Poland all come here on the same day. this previous week. They're getting more now. They're trying to loop Trump in. There's that photograph of them on a conference call with Trump at one point. So it's
right.
They're trying to play nice, but if push comes to shove, and Trump tries to sell chuck the Ukrainians down, under the bus.
Yeah.
I don't think the Europeans are just going to let that happen. So we shall see.
Yeah.
We shall
see. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. I would like to say that, like, Trump himself seems to be vibe coding all of this, to use a current AI term. He seems to think that he can vibe code these negotiations, and Witkoff seems to think the same thing, and they're both wrong. We'll be back right after this. Yeah. Yeah, he goes, I think Putin is tired of all this. He doesn't look very good, although he wants to look different. I don't know what the fuck that means. Don't forget, this was supposed to be over in a week, and if he hadn't gotten stuck in the mud with his tanks, he would have been in Kyiv in 5 hours. And again... Yeah, right. Just shut up. Right.
So idiotic.
Yeah.
So idiotic.
Yeah.
If they didn't get stuck in the mud. They were on a highway, man.
Yeah, right. But he doesn't, I mean... I got to tell you, like, this is a mix of ignorance and cover and blather. Half of this, like, his stuff is like word salad.
Coming back in 15.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am happy, you are happy, let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky, let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling, let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning, I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning, I hope that you like cereal.
Yeah. Look,
you know something about everything, don't you?
Look, I have to say that the fact that that Keir Starmer and the other European leaders are at these talks trying to, if not move the ball forward and end this war for real in a way that is tenable to the Ukrainians, because I don't care what Russia wants, because it wants Ruski Mir, it wants the world, the Russian world. We're all Russians, we just don't know it yet. And that's where they take a page out of his envy for Islamists. And that's where he gets this whole idea from. It's like, oh, it's that easy? No, it's not. And it means bloodshed forever. But in the meantime, I do think it's a positive that they are there. And I think it's also a positive that Trump ain't, for the record.
Yeah.
I think it's good that he's not there, using the power of the United States to effectively manhandle the other European powers in these talks, and his absence actually saves us from them making concessions they would otherwise not make. So that would be
he would just be disruptive.
Yes,
that's all.
Right.
He would not contribute. He would just be disruptive. And again, I just have to keep coming back to the point that, like, the Europeans, I think it was the incident in the Oval, where they really woke up and said, we might have to do this ourselves. And again, in this week's episode, we discussed this. It doesn't have to be Russian tanks on the Champs-Élysées or paratroopers in Gdansk in Poland or Russian ships pulling up to port, in Liverpool. Right. They don't have to actually exert their military might. But if they find success in Ukraine, whatever that might be, and they are re-emboldened and they think that the threat is there, they can exert they can exert that threat and bend Europe to their will. And that is unacceptable. They will also extend their corruption, and they will, they'll have protections because they'll be right there. And the Europeans are waking up to this.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses, because, Trump might get to a point where he makes us kind of, I don't want to say, a negligible participant, because obviously we're too big and we're too involved, and we need to remain connected and intelligence sharing and all sorts of other things.
Well, he won't be there to disconnect us, and that's the thing.
Right.
Johnny, you got another?
It won't be
question?
the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Go for it.
Sorry about that. This is from Christopher Bestland. Does Phil have any insight into the Romanian election?
I don't really know Romanian domestic politics very much, but what I will say about that is this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This is what I was just talking about. Russia doesn't actually have to invade Europe.
Yeah.
They can use their malign influence, their information warfare, their corruption, their monetary, corruption, and also just the kleptocracy and the mafia state. They can, bump people off. They can poison, the heads of, say an arms company. And so this is what happened in Romania. And again, I am not an expert on domestic Romanian politics, but this is what they do. Moscow was involved in infiltrating their body politic, infiltrating their information sphere, infiltrating their electoral process. And this is why, the whole Romanian election crisis happened, because Moscow is emboldened.
Right.
And wants to, their best
and
bet
they're getting
is to tear down and be divisive in Europe.
Yeah, and that's and right now, interestingly enough, there used to be a point where right-wing Europeans were kind of like, America First maggots in terms of their own country. They were sovereignty people, anti-EU, but not necessarily folding in under Russia by any stretch. The shift that has shown up and what gives the game away, I think, is the fact that, like, what's his name? Dan, or George, it's George Simeon and Nikursor Dan. Nikursor Dan is like the centrist guy. He's leading by a little bit. But Simeon is the Russian affiliated guy. And there became and this is how you can tell. There's this trend where it's one thing to have a Brexit, where you're like, we're separating from Europe because we don't know what's in it for us. But if the people that are involved in that are at the same time cozying up to Russia, specifically, then understand that's where their money is coming from. There are a lot of countries in this world you could cozy up to that have a lot more money than Russia, including the United States. And so, arguably, you could strike a better economic deal for your people if you cozied up to California by itself. So most of these countries, when they break away and they're trying to separate themselves from the European Union, the people behind those things are pro-Russian flunkies. And you can tell because they're open about it. They do both things at the same time. If it was the Cold War and you had any kind of sense about this, what prevailed a lot in South America were these like Russian-backed, freedom fighter guys down there who would take over a country and that kind of stuff. And there was this kind of proxy war going on in those kind of countries, but they tiptoed around it, right? They would not overtly say we're backed by the Russians. These guys are they're not even hiding it anymore. And somebody said, ask Snowden. Yeah, it's like the tipping point was like Snowden, like, oh, you can just get away with it. And if you fall, they'll catch you. And so a lot of these guys are like, I'll go in there, be a spoiler for my country, and if anything goes bad, I'll just end up with an Assad, mega mansion in Sochi. That's where they are right now. So the guys that are actually these subversives on Russia's behalf are they don't even have to cover it anymore. And that's where, and maybe that's partly because of Trump as well. right? This is it's hybrid warfare,
And
absolutely, but it's more overt.
They seem to find
covert
their
now.
most they find their most fertile ground in the far right. Not to say that they don't use kind of some other various types of politicians, but they really like the far right because they know that it is violent, disruptive, racist, anti-immigrants, all So, and there's common ground because
if you suck up to the to the right wingers, they've got stacks of AR-15s and machine guns and all kinds of stuff, and they're all weekend warriors and stuff. And if you suck up to the left, you end up with
big bags of soup, and they lay it on the ground, and the anarchists take it and they start throwing it at our cops, at our police.
Right, the big bags of soup.
And when they get caught, they say, "No, this is just soup for my family."
Soup for our family.
This is just soup from my family, right? So I want to remind everybody, Phil has a show on the Edge on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel and check it out. Have we wrangled you over on Substack yet? Have you got a Substack up and running? Or
I do have a Substack up and running. Yeah. I'm trying to be more responsible and faithful with it, but I do have one. Yeah.
Excellent. So Philip Bittner
we'll publish there as well.
And then Johnny Million, of course, has a live stream. He's going to do it right after the show. So as soon as we're done, I'm going to raid his show on Twitch and send some folks over there.
Big channel.
You know it. Never, not at all. So, but I will say the thing to watch out for.
Me since we were 16 years old.
Yeah, that's true. But you had it coming. No pun intended. Look, Wednesday, Phil, you and I will talk. That will be after this phone call with Trump. And we'll be able to swear because it'll be on the live stream. And then, of course, next weekend we can chat about the lack of progress that's being made. But it's something we've got to pay attention to, is that there does seem to be this slide going. I don't know how long Trump can keep up the facade that there's both sides in this issue of Ukraine and Russia, that they're even, and that he's both sides could stop this if they wanted to, and both sides attacked it, and the blame is even on both sides. I don't know how long he can manage that garbage, because it doesn't seem like he's believing it anymore, and that's the thing. He's a decent liar and salesman, but a bad actor. And in this particular case, I think that's what he's up against. So
it's going to be undeniable very soon.
Right. And in the meantime, check out my live stream at infotainmentwars.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, will you? We're trying to get our numbers up, because the only way I get on these other shows and I'm able to debate them to their silly faces is if we have a lot more subscribers. So please do that on whatever site you're on, by the way, because I will bring the show to you. And thanks everybody on Substack and Instagram for joining us today. And we will see you later on. Thanks everybody in Chicago. I'm trying to get right up to the wire so that we can do the raid for Johnny, and he can switch over right as it goes to 11 o'clock. And we're almost there. And tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. We're almost there. It's very exciting. I'm seeing it beat by. And then he's got his guitar on already, and it's going to happen. Hurry up. Play something quick. We've got 12 seconds. 9, 8, 3, 2. Yeah, it's so sad.
Bye-bye.
There we go. All right. Just under the wire. Sounds awesome. All right. Excellent. We'll see you guys next weekend. Take care of yourselves and take care of everybody else. Thanks, Chicago.
Thanks, Chicago. Talk to you later, Hal.
Thanks.
On
Cheers.
Wednesday.
Okay. Hold on. Don't bail out yet. Hold on. I'm gonna throw to Johnny, and I'll get you over there. There you go. Ta-da. Okay. Now you're good. Now you're free. You can be free. Yeah. There you go. Excellent. And
there we go. Oh, God. Right there. Okay.
Excellent.
All right. Bye. I'll see you over there.
All right. Wait. Nope. You can't say bye until I take you off camera. This is a lesson. Okay. Bye. Oh, son of a. He did that on purpose. Just to torment me. It's a torment. All right. And this is why we love him. All right. Thanks, CSL. Yeah. That's exactly what I need, is somebody punking me on. I don't ask much, and I don't ask often. All right, here we go. I'm going to raid him real quick, and then we'll have a Johnny Million raid in there. Let's see. Following. Where is he? Make sure he pops. Where is this? Oh. Do we have the... Where is he? Oh, he's maybe not up yet. Give him a second. Let's see. Johnny Million is a thing to do. Do. And thanks everybody in the chat room. I'll bring you guys in here while I'm doing this as well. Let's see, where is he? Excellent. Let's see if he pops in there. Let's just go to following. Should be in here. As soon as he gets up and running, we'll bring him over. I'll do it. I'm going to make it happen. Told her the raid blocked her. Oh, sorry. Oops. Okay. I was wondering if he's heard of Election Truth Alliance and what's his opinion of them. Okay. That was for CSL. That question was for Phil. We'll ask that on Wednesday. Somebody remind me. Have they ran out of North Korean troops yet? Yes. All right. Let's see. I know. Wait, hold on. There he is. Up. I think he's up. And he's got 0 viewers. But as soon as I do this, I'm going to go start that raid. He's tuning. You guys don't want to miss the tuning. It's the most exciting part. It's super fun. All right, 116 people, 120 people getting ready to raid. 121. And raid right now. There we go. We have officially raided Johnny Million. We successfully raided It's Johnny Million. So send him some love for me. Raid. Excellent. All right, you guys have fun. I will see you later. I got so much stuff to do. Good Lord. One of these days, I'm going to have a relaxing Saturday. Now, granted, a little bit inside baseball. One of the reasons why I didn't get some of the stuff I wanted to get done last night that I had to get done is because Summer took me to see Tom Jones. We went and saw Tom Jones last night at the Wynn. And I got to say, he did his song like, it's this, hold on, let me see if I can find a link to it. Tom Jones, like the television blues, and he dunks on Trump in it. Let's see if it's called, it's because it's got a long name. Talkin' Reality Television Blues. Yeah, it's a new song in there. So I'm going to grab go in here. And I can't play it because I don't want to listen. I'm going to share it. I'm going to post a link in the chat room. And he did it last night, and it was pretty on the nose, man. He even had Trump in the graphics. It's called Talking Reality Television Blues is the song. But my favorite song of the night, I have to say, was Lazarus Man. Like that song was that was just killer. He does these effects on stuff and all, like, it's like, yeah. His rendition of it was just awesome last night. Just fantastic. If you haven't seen, look up Lazarus Man, Tom Jones. I don't know. I haven't watched it on video yet, so I haven't seen if it's got if it does it justice on the recorded versions. But damn, last night it was good. It really was. And he was a lovely gentleman, and his voice at his age, when he's talking, he sounds, because he's Welsh, he sounds like Anthony Hopkins playing Tom Jones in a one-man show. Oh yeah, so a lady threw her underwear on the stage. Yeah, you got some panties and some flowers. It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. Yeah. Did you see the Bruce takedown of Trump on stage? Yes, I did. And I love that, like, Bruce and Taylor Swift, like, their responses, and I think this is very important. If you're at my level or around what I would call the middle-class entertainer level, they'll call us C and D-listers, but these are the same people who believe A-listers eat babies. So why would I want to be an A-lister if A-listers eat babies? Anyways, cell phone on their part. But I would say, good upper middle class entertainers like myself, people who work for a fucking living, we have a responsibility to respond. Oh, Noah's Welsh. That's awesome. we have a responsibility to respond in those moments when he talks shit about people in our zone of things, just like the press do, which I would also fit into that same kind of like celebrity / awarity zone. But if you're huge, the best thing you can do is blow him off. If you're Bruce Springsteen and you say something about him and he hits you back or whatever, like your only response should be this. Like Taylor Swift, anybody that size, that kind of reach, global reach, should just go, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that gentleman. And it will kill him. That will, if you get back and forth, even if you dunk on him, he's now got the attention of people who are legitimately famous, right? So say your piece about him. Yeah, it absolutely is free speech. Leave that to me and people like me to attack him on that stuff. But once you say your piece, and anytime he comes for you, like that's how like the super well-known should treat Trump. Or say stuff like, look, people like him come and go. Don't even say his name. Right? So if you're huge, that's how you respond. That's how you respond. You know, I'm focused on my art, my fans, and all that kind of stuff. And people, you know, politicians come and go. Oh, that would hurt. Right? I'll go after him. The Midas Touch guys will go after him. Luke Beasley will go after him. Trey Crowder and John Fugelsang will go after him. We'll hammer him that it's free speech and they should be allowed and talk about how un-American is and make fun of him and all that kind of stuff. We'll handle that part of it. But those people at that level, the best damage they can do is not to mock or engage, but literally just blow them off. Yeah. And like joke about like every aspect of what he's talking about. Just go, I understand. We change presidents all the time. Like talk like that. It'll drive him crazy. And then, of course, I guess the other way is if you make fun of MBS because it'll break his heart. I'm just saying the trip was pretty gay. It was pretty gay. Like Bruce Valanche was like, that was pretty gay. Actually, it was, yeah. I don't know if it was like, it was the most I've ever seen him smile at another human being. And it was this young bearded man sitting right in front of him and he couldn't stop pointing at him. It was wild. Hey, and like I said, dude, if that's what it took, that it took 2025 to roll around and people are allowed to be themselves as I believe they should be, as you believe they should be, and some of these pent up, angry motherfuckers finally came out of the closet and turned their life around and suddenly relaxed and became human beings. Awesome. They'll have to make up for some of the damage they did. I think people have a responsibility, not to, that repenting takes activity, right? Yes, Bruce Valanche is indeed hilarious. And I'm still convinced that Bruce Valanche was the model for Sweetums from the Muppets. That said, that's why I'm for everyone being themselves, right? Because if you're not yourself and you have to stuff it down, that's when your morals get wonky and you what's one lie compared to another, and if you're living a lie, then why shouldn't you lie to these people and da-da-da-da, right? So it's way better if people can just be themselves. So maybe we'll get lucky. In the meantime, I will see you guys later. Enjoy. Oh, by the way, Boston Brian has a show on, and you should watch it tomorrow. Blunt Politics with Boston Brian. I think he's on Wednesdays too. I'll be back on there someday soon to have simply a friendly conversation. We had a friendly conversation, but an even friendlier one because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. But either way, we love him and support his show. So subscribe to his stuff too. And Phil's show and Johnny. Go watch Johnny. Go over and watch him on Twitch or go watch him on YouTube. Okay, see you later. That's right. You know it. All right. Take care of yourselves. Take care of somebody else. Come on, 10 more subscribers. We can do it. Just subscribe. Do it.